there are, because of this, populations will collapse and fall. And there are estimates that the world population in another 250 years will be 1/100th of what it is now.
Oh,
So
wow.
the whole world is going to change in ways that nobody can comprehend.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to On the Record with Subhash. I am Subhash, and today I'm interviewing Subhash Kak. He is a renowned computer scientist, author, philosopher, knower of Vedic knowledge, knows a lot about science, has written some books about including artificial intelligence. He's a Padma Shri Award winner, so very, very accomplished human being, and I'm so excited to have him on. So welcome to my podcast. It's called On the Record, and I'm very excited to have you here.
Glad
Um,
to be on your show. Yes.
so the first question I have for you is about your early life and how that influenced you to have an interest in science, mathematics, and philosophy.
Well, I grew up in small towns in Jammu and Kashmir state. My father was a veterinarian and he would get posted to a different town every 2 years. So that gave me enough time not to have very deep, uh, school friendships because I changed
Mhm.
school every 2 years and gave a lot of time to me to study books. So I was a bookworm. I read up literally everything under the sun, from novels to philosophy to science to history and whatever. So that was really the beginning. And then I wanted to be a writer, but my mom said, no, how are you going to support yourself? So she packed me off to an engineering college. And there I led a double life. I would sit in the back row and read my general stuff while the teacher was doing the math and so on.
So, when you're like writing your books or anything like self-reflective upon your journey, how do you think like the Indian culture, specifically because you grew up in Kashmiri, my best friend is from Kashmiri, and how do you think that in the Vedic tradition influenced your thinking and how you decided to what you decided to write about?
Well, the best thing about the Vedic tradition or the Indian tradition is that it encourages you to ask questions. Because the Vedic tradition is not about dogma, it's about a journey. It's about a journey to self knowledge. And I think that's been perfect for me in all my fields of inquiry, because in science also, you're supposed to ask the same questions. What is reality, or what is this field, or what is that field? And it helps you or encourages you to ask really deep questions. Now, if you believe in dogma, then what that does is that creates a double personality. You have one subfield of action in your life where you're asking questions, let's say in business or whatever field it might be. And there is other field which you have shut off to yourself. So I think that's not a very happy situation. And therefore, my approach, which is what my parents inculcated in me, they always said, ask questions, and you don't have to believe in anything that we tell you, but this is where we have arrived at in our journey. And if you don't want to, in fact, I can tell you a funny story. When I was young, I was in my early teens, and my parents used to go to the temple sometimes. And I would tell them, why do I have to go to the temple? Because divinity is present everywhere. So I'm not going to step in. And they would say, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. So I think that was wonderful. You ask and, be honest to yourself. That is the Indian way. That's the Sanatan way.
So I'm a vegetarian and I didn't actually grow up like that. So when I was younger, I wasn't when I was like 3. And then I think I made a decision when I was like 3 or 4, I want to be vegetarian. So I think that's probably my favorite example of my parents being like allowing me to pick my own path. But I think a lot of the times I do end up following what they have laid
Correct.
out.
What one is encouraged to do is, hey, you can try this or that and think about it and then do whatever you think is true.
Yeah.
And talking of vegetarianism, Kashmiris are not vegetarian. So I grew up as being a non-vegetarian, but I married a girl from Uttarakhand who was a vegetarian. And initially, she switched over and she became a
Mm.
non-vegetarian for about 10 years. And then one day we switched back. We said, well, animals are so sweet. They're just like us. They truly are. If you have a pet
I
dog or
have a dog.
yeah, so they're like us, aren't they? They're like us.
I think, well, my dad jokes that her name is Ronnie, so it means queen.
Mm.
And she's truly the queen of our household. I think the way like it's not even my bedroom is her bedroom now. Like that's how it is. But um, so we don't make her. So I know a lot of like families that are vegetarian, they'll make their dog vegetarian, but we decided to let her continue to eat meat. But like I think whenever we have people come over and they ask us like, "Oh, how come like you let her eat meat and you don't even eat meat?" And it just kind of like she's like an animal. Like how she's like I don't know. I think for me that was like a choice we made, but
Yeah, I can add to that. If you look at the sea, and the sea has fishes of different size, and the big fish must eat the small fish. So the fishes can't be vegetarian, right? Or the fish can't be vegetarian. And
yeah.
therefore, it's perfectly fine for people in the food chain, if they so desire, or if you live in the high altitudes of Tibet, where there's very little vegetation and the winters can be extremely harsh. So it's perfectly reasonable to eat meat, right? So I think what the lesson from the Vedic way is minimize harm. Ahimsa means minimize harm. It doesn't mean absolute no killing, because sometimes you have to eat animals. Food chain. We got to remember that, and there is life even in plants, if one way to really think of it. So one's got to find the middle path. And in fact, one of the great lines in Kathopanishad is that the right path is narrow like the razor's edge. It's neither one extreme to one side nor to the other.
Yeah.
Find that middle path of compassion and wisdom and reasonableness and search for truth. If one were to define the Vedic way, this is what it is. Find the middle path, be reasonable, be compassionate, because it's the same Atman in all living beings. So really we are all the same, we are connected. And that's why you've got to be compassionate, because the other person is also you in a certain sense. We are all entangled, we are all connected with each other, including animals. So be compassionate to animals also. But if you have to eat animals, that's fine, but be compassionate. Don't overdo it. In fact, when we are growing up in Kashmir, perhaps people used to eat meat once a week or once in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now people eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think that's excessive. Does a person need that much? Okay, eat meat, but don't overdo it.
I see your point. That does make sense. Well, you're speaking, I noticed that there was like a theme in what you were just talking about, and you've written a lot about consciousness as well. So how would you define it, and why do you think that it's not fully explainable by current science?
Consciousness is the frontier of all of science. Why? Because you want to create computers which are conscious, right?
Yeah,
So
like artificial intelligence.
AI, if AI machines could be conscious, wouldn't that change the world? Then you don't have to do anything at all. We'd all be laying down in our rooms, drinking coffee and watching movies from night to morning to night, and let AI machines do everything, right? But of course, there'll be a dystopian world. Perhaps the world would come to an end. There won't be any meaning to life left. Okay, so what is consciousness? Consciousness is really awareness. It's not intelligent processing, because computers can also process intelligently, and computers can even drive cars now, right? Like Tesla
Yeah.
and other cars. So, and 60% of all jobs in America are transportation jobs. So if there were
Okay.
self-driving trucks and cars, etc., 60% of the people would be unemployed. And that might happen. Consciousness is not procedures, logical procedures, because computers can do that. Consciousness is awareness. and
Mm.
computers are not aware. We are aware. And a couple of years ago, I proved a theorem mathematically showing that computers will never be conscious, which is a good thing, which is a relief. Just imagine if computers were conscious, the skies would fall, literally, right? Or
Well,
metaphorically.
but that was a couple of years ago, and AI technology has improved so much since then. I mean, just recently, like, I guess not that recently, but ChatGPT has come out and, all these things, and they're slowly getting incorporated in, even into like education, almost every facet of life. I know my dad was talking about like how one day it's gonna like it'll be able to do his job, and I don't know about teaching, but I know that like teachers have been relying on it more and more. So I know that AI, would you think that the modern AI that has the ability one day, like I don't know how many years into the future, to be truly conscious?
No, that's what my theorem showed, that no matter how long AI were to be improved, 100 years from now, thousand years from now, computers will never be conscious. However, your dad is right. Most jobs will disappear because most jobs we might say, hey, what I do is unique. I meaning anybody, any individual. But really, whatever most of us, 99% of the people do is follow procedures, right? And even teachers, you don't need teachers because right now you have Chat GPT or there are other platforms, so they can replace teachers as well. So uh, AI will become more and more efficient and powerful, and will do a lot of creative stuff also, which is combinatorial, like art of certain kind, where you bring certain patterns together and create new patterns. But true creativity will always be beyond the ability of AI machines.
Well, so when you say most jobs and you're talking about ChatGPT or just AI in general, its ability to do these jobs proficiently, do you like, I feel there's a big argument currently saying like we should let that happen and there should be like an improvement or whatever, like we should be able to like improve and evolve. And then there's another argument saying no, we should be able to preserve the human aspect of all these jobs. Like for example, I think yes, teachers, their job description is to teach knowledge based on a textbook or based on a curriculum. But there will always be the aspect of like humanity that teachers have, like about nurturing these students. And like sometimes you'll have a same teacher, you'll see them in the same school for like over 10 years and building that relationship and that bond. So where do you think you lie like on the two different like aspects of AI currently?
You're absolutely right. There are two sides to education or learning. One is information, and that's where the last few years or the computer age has changed everything. Now you don't even have to go to the library. You have your phone or your laptop, and all the world's knowledge is at your fingertips, right? Now, of course, the challenge is, why do you even have to go to school or college? Theoretically, a person can access whatever information they need and read it up, for example, history or science or whatever, and learn it. So that is one side, information. The other side is socialization, because growing up is not just information. It's also knowing how to navigate this world, how to speak to each other. And that's where, in fact, the argument could be made that you go to college not for information, because people are not even paying attention in classroom, right? They're probably dozing off. Like I was when I was an undergraduate, I was reading my novels in the last row of the classroom when the teacher was teaching his mathematics. So I think people are doing the same. People haven't changed, right? So, but you need to speak with each other, make your friends in your class, or have mentors. And when you have challenges in your life, you don't know whether you should be doing A or B, you talk to your mentor, somebody you trust, and then they help you find your way, or they give you advice. Hey, what do you think about this? Or maybe
Yeah.
you're too worried about one side of it, and there is this other side, and that helps you find the solution to whatever your difficulty is.
Well, so do you think that we should let AI continue to progress and like on like in the job aspect in the overall job market. Like for example, you said 60% of jobs are transportation jobs, which is a statistic I wasn't aware of, but it's very surprising. And right now, like Tesla technology is obviously like you can buy a mode where it will drive you completely like destination A, destination B. It'll even park for you. So, do you think that it's something that we should let it continue to like grow and maybe overtake these jobs and change for maybe like future evolution in whatever job market we currently have? Or do you think that we should be preserving like certain jobs and, limiting AI to what it can and cannot do in the professional environment at least?
You can't prevent technology if it does something much more efficiently from being used widely. And
Hmm.
it's like saying, hey, you should still let people on the assembly line do these widgets and hammer them in when a computer can do it or a machine and a robot can do it, right? So clearly, humans will not do it. Let AI do whatever is possible, or robots do whatever is possible, and that is unstoppable. Most jobs will go away. And there are, because of this, populations will collapse and fall. And there are estimates that the world population in another 250 years will be 1/100th of what it is now.
Oh,
So
wow.
the whole world is going to change in ways that nobody can comprehend. The population is going to fall, and it has already begun to fall in Asia, most of Asia, Europe, the Americas. Mostly right now, the fall is the fastest in South Korea, where 100 people are making only 30 babies. 100 people making 30 babies. In 2 generations, that makes 10, zero point 0.3 square. That's about zero point 0.1. In 3 generations, it's 3%. 3/100. 3 generations, only 100 years, or less than 100 years. So things are changing, Soha. You are going to see a world which is very different, which will be very different from what it is right now. Very, very different. In countries like Japan, Italy, and Spain, about 15-20% of all houses are vacant. That's going to happen in the US as well in the future. In fact, just yesterday, the head of ChatGPT and Sam Altman is his name. He said, "Look," and I think Elon Musk also joined, or somebody else. There were two other industry titans. They said jobs are going to disappear so quickly. So please have UBI. You know what UBI is? Universal Basic Income. So everybody in the country gets a certain amount of money, let's say $500 or
Hmm.
$1,000. So, and that's enough so that you can live a simple life. Yeah, there's enough for food, etc., etc. So give money to everybody because there would be jobs, let's say, only for 10-15% of the population. So they'll work and they'll be paid a lot, but everybody else will have minimum stuff, and they can have, if they are Indians, they can eat Haldiram. If they're not Indians, they can eat McDonald's or whatever else and watch Netflix from morning to night and drink beer if they drink beer, whatever. It's not a very attractive thought. But that's where it's going. And there's at least one person who says, I'm so terrified of population collapsing, so I'm going to do whatever I can. So Mr. Elon Musk has already made 14 babies. So he's trying, that. He's got 14 babies, 14 children.
I did not know that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But that's one person making 14 babies is not going to compensate for
For
all
the
the other people who are not having babies.
Oh my God. That's a scary thought. It's like the movies that I used to watch when I was younger.
Right, right. It is. It is. And it brings us back to the Vedic tradition,
Yeah.
because the Vedic tradition says we are not just bodies, you're also consciousness. So what it tells, it opens up something for everybody, all human beings, that look, life is actually very exciting. This inner journey, which you can map into a journey in your life of aspiration, of achievement, of desires, that can be very exciting. And therefore, it's not just about food and drink and this and
Yeah.
that. Because one of the reasons why people are so unhappy and people are getting into drugs and all that is because somehow the media, um, the classrooms, everybody's telling them that you're really fundamentally nothing but your body. And that is false. So if there is unhappiness, that's because our educators are failing us, because there is something more. And now you might say, well, why should I believe you? Well, you should believe me because of my mathematical theorem, which says that consciousness is not a product of the brain. Consciousness is something more than the activity in the brain. It's something, it's a mysterious light which
It's like
transcends
beyond your gross
reality.
body. It's something.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Yes.
you're speaking about pretty ancient philosophy right now, and in the nature of physical reality, you propose a synthesis about modern physics and ancient philosophy. Do you think the two are on a collision course, or do you think they're going to kind of blend together as opposed to butt heads?
Vedanta or the Vedic system is perfectly consistent with science, with all of science.
Hmm.
There is no conflict at all, none whatsoever. I can tell you, as somebody who does both sides, there's nothing. The Vedic tradition accepts all of science and embraces all of science as perfectly valid because that is related to bodies and reductionism, etc., which is one aspect of reality, right? Two aspects of reality from bottom up, which is what science is, normal classroom or academic science is all about, and top down, which is what consciousness is all about. So
Mhm.
they should be nicely blending together. And that's
Yeah,
what does say. It doesn't, there's no dogma at all, as you acknowledge yourself. There's no dogma in the Vedas. Vedas is all that it's saying is that it's a path of self-discovery and
yeah.
self-knowledge. Keep on asking yourself, who am I? If you ask yourself every day, honestly, who am I? And let me explore it, then you are on the Vedic way. You are in the Sanatan way. Sanatan means eternal. It's the path of eternal truth. So ultimately, as populations collapse and fall rapidly, people, it'll be disruptive, of course, and people would then say, well, we must find out who we are. And there is, fortunately, a roadmap that the Vedic books provide everybody. And it's not sectarian, it's not dogma. It just says you can do it this way or the other, or the other. You can either do it through the sciences, you can either do it through the arts, you can do it as a dancer, as a poet, as a musician, or just as a good human being.
So, would you say that yoga is one Vedic tradition that the modern world underestimates? Because I think there's a lot of things. So, my mom, when she was in India, she was an Ayurvedic doctor. So, she has a lot of knowledge about these things, and both my parents they still very much learn about that kind of stuff and yoga and meditation. So, I think I've heard since I was younger, the solution to any problem is meditation. I remember like anything that ever happened. I was being bullied at school, I was struggling with a subject or anything, they'd be like, so hot, just do meditation. And it was something I fought for so long, but I think it's just because my parents are telling me to do it. So it's something I had an immediate guttural, like, no reaction to. But I think that I'm starting to come around to it. So is there something you would say that the Vedic tradition, the Vedic world has and has had for a long time that the modern world is just now like underestimating or just now getting used to?
Absolutely, it's true. And yoga is the way, and Ayurveda is the way. The other thing that is happening in America or in Europe is that medicine is failing, modern medicine is failing. 80% of all medical research cannot be replicated. Americans have some of the worst health anywhere. Their lifespan itself is much shorter than that of other developed countries, including poor countries like Indonesia has a longevity which is 5 years greater. And the reason is Western medicine fundamentally, it's important for crisis and surgery and this and that, but it's fundamentally a flawed system. because
Mhm.
allopathy means treatment of symptoms. What the world has to go to is Ayurveda. Your mom is has got just the right skills. That is the right science, Ayurveda. And because Ayurveda treats the whole body as a system, it doesn't say, okay, here is something, this is hurting you, so let me chop off your arm or this or that. No, it says, okay, let's find out why you have reached a state of disharmony. I think ultimately the whole world, the two paths would be yoga and Ayurveda, both of which your parents do. So you're fortunate to have been born in a very special family.
I'll tell my parents right after this interview. I'll tell them I'm very grateful. You've taught and spoken all over the world. So what is something you hope your students or people that listen to you talk take away from your work? If you could pick like one major aspect of everything that you've done.
I'll tell everybody, question yourself. Go away from dogma. Just don't believe in stories. Stories are good. Stories are good, metaphorically, they're beautiful. All stories are valuable. Fiction or even religious literature. There's something to be learned. But don't be literal. A lot of people take stories to be the literal truth, and
Yeah.
that is horrible. There is a voice within you. There's a voice within each person, and that's sometimes called the witness or sakshi, or in the Vedic way, the term in Ishopanishad is soham, saha aham, that I am. We have forgotten that I'm really that witness, and I've gotten too much attached to the outer stuff, which is not to say that you shouldn't be doing the outer stuff. Do the outer stuff, be active in life, be full, be passionate, but realize that your true self is that witness within you.
What would you say is the proudest moment in your career so far? Because I wanted a way to bring up your Padma Shri Award, but I also didn't know how to bring it up, so I'm asking this question.
You know, the most important stuff that I've done in my career is a discovery I made 4 or 5 years ago, which could be revolutionary in science, which is that the universe is not three-dimensional, it's slightly less than 3 dimensions. And all of physics emerges out of it, just short of 3 dimensions. It's actually E-dimensional, 2.718, and I've written many, many papers on it. And you should Google it, the E-dimensional universe. Shown that this way you can even understand the structure of the genetic code. You can do so many things, and it's possible that this could change science, or this could change how we look at the nature of reality.
I mean, I'm just learning about it and I definitely will Google this after. So, if there's something you could tell your younger self with everything that you've accomplished so far in your life and all the many different avenues that you've like explored, is there something you'd tell yourself? I don't know if it's a piece of advice or foreshadowing or something like in relation to like where you started out to where you are now.
For younger folks, in many ways, it's much harder to grow up now than when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, we communed a lot with nature. There was not much to do. There was no TV, there was no radio where I grew up. In fact, I grew up for 2 years in a remote Ladakh town where there were no cars also. So you just walked around, and you just read or you walked around. Life was simple. But life is much harder for young people right now. They are assaulted by information and images, on their phones, and what you see or do also rewires your brain. So people are losing their agencies. These ideas and thoughts and images can take control of your mind. To have a certain discipline, and one of the disciplines that I would encourage everybody is that there should be rules. I shall not use a phone in a social setting.
Hmm.
And I'm at home, I'm having dinner or whatever, I shall not, even if I'm tempted very sorely to do so, I shall not take it out. So I think you've got to have limits on your own behavior, young people,
Right.
to simplify one's own life. Because if you don't, um, what can take control of your brain, that sort of demonic power. This is what demons are. Demons are things which come from outside into your mind, and then you can't get rid of them. You can't cast them off. And I think this is this is from that perspective, it's not only an AI age, it's also the demonic age. And it's very important to fight it. So the youth right now, they have to be warriors in order to survive in this world.
I was just wondering if you could maybe elaborate on what it was like to grow up in such a like I think I don't want to say fought over, but it's such an interesting like part of history because one of my good friends, her whole family's from Kashmir, and she'll tell me stories about her grandparents, and it's such an interesting part of history to hear about. I mean, interesting and horrifying so, but it's definitely like I think it's a part of history that sometimes when growing up here, if I was not Indian or if I didn't have like close ties to people that are from Kashmir, it's something that you don't really learn about much in like the US education system.
Well, Kashmir's story is rather tragic because our community was sort of exiled from there, and very, very sad. You know, people have lived there for any number of generations. But in a certain sense, that's what's going to happen to every people from all over. As populations collapse and the migrations from one part of the world to another accelerate, you know, as the population fall will not be even, it'll be greater in some regions. So people will have to migrate. They'll have to migrate to wherever jobs are. So more and more people would be dislocated culturally or from their collective memories. So in that sense, what has happened to Kashmir is going to happen to everybody else as well. So that is the takeaway. That
But
look, disruption and exile, not necessarily forced exile, even voluntary exile. You have to leave. You have to leave your memories. You have to leave the past because the past doesn't exist anymore. All that exists is now and the unfolding future. The past is gone, and that's the big takeaway from it.
can you, if you're comfortable with it, can you share your story about how you came to the US?
Well, you know, in our case, we were five siblings. As I told you in the beginning, we grew up in very, very small towns with, you know, literally no amenities. There's no electricity in some of those places. So we used to study under kerosene lamps, you know, flickering, dim kerosene lamp. And we were five of us. And when we were very young, my father, who I told you was a veterinarian, he said, "Look, anybody can do anything." And he was probably joking, or he was half serious. He says, "Well, I want all of my children to be able to write doctor before their name." So maybe he was joking, but all of us took it very seriously. So all of us did our PhD. And once you did your PhD, you had to find a place where you could work. And that's how we all ended up in the US, you know, as professors. And so that's how, firstly, I started teaching in Delhi, and then I came over to the US.
So all of your siblings have PhDs.
Right, the five of us, yeah, all of us have
That's
PhD.
a pretty cool story to tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My older brother and I have PhD in electrical engineering, and my sister, who's younger to us, is in economics. Then I have another sister who was a longtime professor at Hawaii. She has a PhD in literature and German literature and comparative literature. And our youngest brother, who lives in Washington, his PhD was in anthropology and health. So everybody did a PhD. Yeah.
Is that something that you think is going to be passed down to the next generation of your family?
Well, you mean the
I
ability to
I could
write
imagine.
doctor? The ability to write doctor before their name, because that's what my father had told us, in joking. So both my children do write doctor before their name because they're physicians. So to a certain extent, it's true already. Yes.
Oh gosh. Well, both my parents, they don't have PhDs yet, but they both have masters. I think my dad has two and my mom has one. So
Okay.
that can be the Kangele family legacy.
So
Yeah.
in fact, many people come to me and they ask me, should we do a PhD? And I generally say, don't. It's going to be a waste of time unless you really find a proper mentor, because most PhD programs, sadly, I'm not talking of hard sciences, but social sciences and other fields. There are some exceptional people, but a lot of people are so, you know, closed-minded, and they're just pushing their ideology, etc., on their students. It's quite a sad story. So don't do PhD.
You know, it's gonna be funny if you have a PhD. So if the title of this episode is Dr. Subhash Uncle tells Soha Kangele not to get a PhD.
That's a good one. Humor is very important. I think that's a very good title. Very good title. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I am a big fan of comedy. I know you said humor is important, but I think I find like in day-to-day conversation it comes easily, but I also like to I don't want to say study because then I kind of sound like a psychopath, but I think it's so interesting to study like comics like in our very popular comics and how they became popular. I think one of my favorites, I'm kind of outing myself now, but his name is John Mulaney, and he has won many an Emmy, and all of his Netflix specials are so good. And I think that comedy is such an underrated form of like, I feel like there's such an intelligence to it that it's so difficult to like contrive and like understand unless you're just like a viewer and you're just watching it because it's such like an underlying thing. But then when you dissect it, it's like, wow.
Totally, I agree. In fact, comedy is what distinguishes us from AI. AI has no humor, because AI only does. AI is serious. What makes us human? If you were to ask me, what is one of the questions that you asked me, what is consciousness? Consciousness is AI plus humor. And I should be using this definition now. I'll credit it to Soha. I'll say that in a conversation with Soha, I hit upon this insight.
Well, because so I know so recently, I don't know if you know this, but the CEO of Netflix, and I'll fact check myself later and then I'll write in the margins while I'm editing this video if it's correct or not, but I'm pretty sure the CEO of Netflix they used AI in the background of one of their new TV shows or something like that. And he said that they plan to use it more in the future. So I kind of was thinking like can AI write movie scripts or TV show scripts? Because that would put a lot of writers out of a job and I'm not sure if you're familiar with SNL, Saturday Night Live. Obviously one of the most popular like TV shows, and it's a comedy show. And what would it be like if kind of AI took over and replaced the jobs of the writers? And I could not imagine that because I asked my trusty ChatGPT to write me a joke. And they were all just like dad puns, and I'm sure they found it off the internet. But there's no like creativity in any of the humor that I was asking it to do, like in a response to whatever prompt I gave it. So that is something I noticed that AI, it does have a difficulty. I think maybe there's a humanity in humor that it's difficult to.
Okay. My answer is AI will replace writers in most scripts. Why? Because most scripts are recycled anyway.
Yeah.
Fact, and so AI can do it much more efficiently because there are only 4 or 5 different scripts, fundamentally storylines, and then you dress it up differently, make it more contemporary. And in fact, there's a very famous line, even in sciences, there's a very famous line attributed to Albert Einstein, and the line is, plagiarize but hide your sources. Because even in sciences, you're copying others,
Yeah.
or at least the basic fundamental idea. So, not e-dimensionality. Nobody had ever thought of it, accepting that. But a lot of the stuff that goes on in science is also recycling of ideas that already exist. So, yeah, AI will do that. Now, it cannot create new jokes, but there are very few new jokes anyway.
But so my response to that is so I was just thinking, are you familiar with the TV show Friends?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of episodes. Yeah.
I have watched the entire thing, and that is a feat, might I add, because it is long. It is a very long TV show. But it's one of the most famous shows in the world. It's been streamed, I don't know how many billions of times and billions of hours. But it's so revolutionary when it came out. I remember my mom telling me like she would watch Friends, and that's kind of how she learned English when she first moved here. And I think that watching it back, there's so many jokes that originate, or so many like comedy concepts that originated in these I don't know what early 2000s, maybe 90s TV shows that are like it started there and then it happened. So like I think that they're probably even comedy is an art form. It can probably use AI to better itself because at the end of the day, I think most art forms can utilize like that's the whole point. Like they stand throughout time. They've been around for centuries. So in some way or another, I think that comedy can utilize AI, but I don't think that AI has the ability to like I don't think AI could have written Friends.
True. No, I agree generally with what you're saying, I also agree that AI can be utilized because originality also has maybe 10% or 5%, which is absolutely new,
Yeah,
but the other 95% is still using props which have been used before. So with that, I think this process will go on, and there would be humans will still be needed, that new stuff, 5% that break away from everything else, something new. But then once you have got, and this is how writers also write. As a writer, I can tell you that even as a poet, in poetry, you have an intuition, an idea, but then you have to have the skills, and the skills are all those props that you have learned from reading thousands of poems. Then you know how to dress up this new vision that you have in a structured form which makes sense, which readers can relate to.
right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of poetry, I did a lot of research into you, so I guess I could be considered a stalker, but I did not know that you wrote poetry. So who would you say your favorite poet is?
Well, I don't read very much of poetry anymore, but contemporary American poets, one who's very well known is T.S. Eliot,
Oh
and I
yeah.
did read all of his stuff. And but even then, if you read T.S. Eliot, he's also some of his most powerful lines are echoes of stuff that he had read from earlier stuff. He even
Right.
takes Sanskrit texts and he
Oh
recycles
wow.
them from the Upanishads and all that. So um, uh, and you have Yeats and many others. These are 19th century, 20th century poets. Um, I don't read very much because a lot of what poets write is literally unreadable. They're saying the same stuff. It's like there was an age for drama, which is the Greeks. They wrote the greatest tragedies, and then in the 20th century there was some great Ionesco and others. There's some great stuff, but it's very hard to relate to a lot of stuff now because it's been done. Or novels, a lot of the new novels are recycled stuff of the old. Or what do you say, heartbreak, this or that you broke up and then you got together, this, what is the new stuff, right? Hard for a writer to come up with this, unless of course the setting is different. Okay, now you're going to be flying your own plane, and in the past you were on somebody's plane. So it doesn't really change this stuff in any fundamental way.
I would, well, also like poetry. And I think this is such a basic answer after saying I like poetry, but I remember reading a poem by Edgar Allan Poe in school in like eighth grade or something. And I loved it so much. And then I started to read all of his other stuff. And then there's this big mystery about his death that is so like on brand for him, which is really cool. And I also like Emily Dickinson because she was like revolutionary for a time because she was a woman and she was writing a lot about her life. So I guess that is pretty cool.
Excellent, excellent. So great to talk to you.
Okay. Before we wrap up, I had one thing I wanted to say. A quick activity, if you will. Okay. Um, these are like it's called rapid reality. So basically, all it's like very quick questions and you answer in like 2 words. Okay. Ready? Okay. Is reality objective or subjective?
Both,
Okay. Is time an illusion or dimension?
both,
Which one's more mysterious, the brain or the universe?
both.
Okay. Which is more powerful, intuition or logic?
You need intuition before you can use logic.
Okay. If you could travel to any time in ancient civilization, where would you go?
Maybe hard to tell. There's so many enticing places,
I know where I would go immediately.
India, Kashmir, Greece, Rome, all kinds of, there are lots of amazing places
I
there.
love Greek mythology. I'm a Greek mythology buff. I'd immediately go back to
To
like
Greece, okay, good.
to
I,
Greece.
I love Greece. I love Greece myself, yeah.
If you could travel to, oh no, I said, okay, book or poem, which one would you read the most?
A book or a poem?
Yeah.
I don't know. Depends what is in front of me. Poetry can be boring. A lot of poetry right now, but look, books are also boring. It's easier to watch a show or quickly scan through it. I depends. It all depends.
Okay, depends. If AI could feel, what's the first emotion you would allow it to experience?
Um, Sadness or pain.
Sadness. Okay. And what is one word you would use to describe the future? We did a lot of talking about the future.
Um, Hope.
Okay, and this is the last one. If you could tell people to read one book and it cannot be one of your own, which I know might be difficult because you've written so many, but if you could tell people to read one book, what would it be?
The Upanishads.
By who? Do you know the author?
Upanishads are these amazing books from India,
Yeah.
say 3,000 years ago,
Oh wow.
which are these dialogues between people. They're absolutely incredible. They summarize, dialogue between a teacher or a student or between two people. They're mysterious. They are Emily Dickinson raised to the power n.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Music to my ears, if you will. So that was the last question I had for you. Thank you so much for joining me. It has been such a privilege to have you on, and thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me because I know this was a little bit longer, but don't you worry, I will edit it. But this was such an honor, and I'm so happy. And to anyone listening, um, I hope you enjoyed it because I had a lot of fun. So,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Soha. Was happy to be on your show.
Do you have one piece of parting advice to give me?
Oh, have faith in yourself and you know, everybody, don't be intimidated by anybody or anything. Actually, even um, once you discover, even the most famous professors are in their skin, they are like anybody else. So don't be afraid of anyone.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll keep that in my mind.
All righty. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Bye. Bye, Soha.